Guys, I have a confession to make. I have played a lot of Dynasty Warriors. I know, quite controversial. I would safely guess thousands of hours. No one can do the math on that over the past 20 plus years, but I've played a lot. I have probably maxed out characters that I still can't confidently say their name properly. Like, is it Menghua? Menghuo? I guess I'll never know. Fuck, that rhymed. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. All of this is to say that despite playing just an unhealthy amount of Dynasty Warriors, I still don't know how the story ends. Like, if you were to ask me, like, gun to the head, turn it sideways, kill shot, if you were to ask me how the Dynasty Warriors series ends, I don't know, man. And I've never really thought about it. So I want to explore in today's video for the month of awesome August, the month where maybe I'm going to be uploading a lot more. We'll see. Probably. That's my level of commitment. Probably. I'm probably going to upload a lot more this month. You're probably going to see a lot more of my face. But that's exactly what we're going to explore today. So I'm not much of a history buff. I am not much of, like, I haven't read the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, so there's probably going to be a lot of, like, actually, and feel free to go ahead and correct me in the comments. But I've done a little bit of research for this video, and I want to go through with you guys how the Three Kingdoms period actually ends, and, you know, compare the ending of the games versus the ending in real life. So, of course, we have all of these memories of these iconic battles from the series. You know, we've got the Yellow Turban Rebellion, we've got Hulao Gate, whether it actually did or didn't happen or not, you know, who's to say? We've got the Battle of Chi Bi, we've got Guan Yu at Guandu. How confusing is that? We've got Liu Bei getting angry about Guandu getting killed at Fan Castle. We've got all these different battles. But what about the battles that actually, like, wrap up the period? Because typically what ends... What are you doing over here? I mean, I guess while I'm talking to you over here, you should really consider joining the membership program on the Koei Collection channel. If you'd like access to early videos, exclusive members-only videos, exclusive emojis, exclusive badges next to your name on YouTube, members-only Discord, access to livestream VODs. If any of that interests you, check the link in the description, and thank you for letting me pay the bills for this section of the video. I guess let's just get back to talking about Dynasty Warriors. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. Where was I? So there are some iconic battles that happen in this Three Kingdoms period that happens actually after the end of the Dynasty Warriors series. However, what typically happens at the end of Dynasty Warriors story, it doesn't matter which character you pick, typically what ends up happening is the narrator will say, and then the land got united, or something to that effect. So there's always a definitive start, but there is never a definitive ending, and it's just whichever faction you're playing as, they win. It's as simple as that. So first, before we dive into the history, let's actually look at how the games actually stop. So I think most people originally would have said, you know, these games end at the Battle of Wuzhang Plains because, of course, that's where the old game stopped. But back then, the Jin faction didn't exist until, you know, except for that really weird kind of crossover period where it's like, you know, Sima Yi backstabbing Cao Cao at the end of Dynasty Warriors 6. But ever since Dynasty Warriors 7 introduced the Jin faction, timeline's been slowly creeping ever so slightly forward, and I believe the furthest any main game has ever gone, historically speaking, is the Battle of Chengdu, which occurred in the year 263, which of course is the fall of Shu. Essentially, Liu Shan surrenders Shu to Jin. And with this depiction, so I believe it's depicted in both Dynasty Warriors 8 and it's also depicted in Dynasty Warriors 9. Essentially what ends up happening is Sima Zhao marches on to Shu, Zhang Wei basically tries every strategy in the book to try and hold them off, it doesn't work, Liu Shan surrenders, and then Sima Zhao is just like, hey, why don't we treat these people with dignity and respect, and, you know, we'll feed them and all that stuff, and, you know, it's a lovely ending, awesome. And then, essentially, like, Sima Zhao dies like 2 years later, and I believe the narration goes to, it's something to the effect of, oh, and his son, Sima Yan, he's founded the Jin dynasty, and in 280, the land was unified. You know, that is basically like the equivalent of, oh gosh, like imagine if this in a different series. Imagine you're watching Lord of the Rings and then there's the Battle of Helm's Deep, and right at the end of that battle, it's just like, oh wow, so Aragorn and friends had celebrated a wonderful victory here at Helm's Deep. And anyway, Aragorn ended up going on to becoming the King of Gondor and by extension, the King of Mankind. And oh, they ended up beating Sauron and unifying the land a couple of years later. Like, can you imagine that? Like, Anyway, but I guess the main difference here, and maybe the main limitation, which is a sentiment you're going to hear echoed throughout the rest of this video, is that Koei hasn't fleshed out the characters for not only the faction of Jin, but their rivals as well. So I think that that is a really big reason, or a limiter, as to why we don't have a bit more of a fleshed out ending or definitive ending to the Three Kingdoms period, at least yet. I really hope that, we do get that in the future. But there's more or less like this 17-year gap between when the Dynasty Warriors games end and also when the actual historical ending of the Three Kingdoms period takes place. Now, to be fair, I believe Dynasty Warriors 8 does technically go past Chengdu. There's this Jin hypothetical route, I think it's called Defeat the Rebels, and then the Battle of Jianye, where you conquer Wu, and then you also have Defend Chengdu, and then the grand finale, where there's the final conflict at Chibi. Koei's basically just like, all right, how do we hypothetically speaking wrap this up? I know, let's do a Chibi 2.0, because everyone loved Chibi. And I'm going to clarify this as well, because there is a rebellion. It's called Zhonghui's Rebellion, and I believe that that is a stage in Dynasty Warriors 8. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I could be misremembering that, but that is essentially like the first main conflict, historically speaking, I guess, that happens after the battle at Chengdu. And essentially what happens, or what follows the games, now diving into history, is there is 4 main conflicts or battles that happen within the 17-year period. And one thing I'm curious about as well is, okay, well, during that period, how many unique officers that we have from the Dynasty Warrior series, how many of them are still alive? How many of them are present for this ending? Well, let's find out. So let's go through Zhonghui's Rebellion. So this occurred in 264. Remember that lovely ending to the Battle of Chengdu, and Sima Zhao was like, yeah, we're all friends now. Yay, like, happy ending or whatever. Well, historically, within a few months, everyone is basically dead. What happens is, Zhonghui, fresh off of conquering Shu, he looks around at his massive army, and he's just like, I think I'm going to do a Dynasty Warrior, and I'm going to be the guy who's going to be in charge. Well, this is mainly due to Jiang Wei, the man who just got defeated by Jin, starting to whisper sweet nothings and like basically just speed running Zhonghui's defection to the Jin faction, basically. It goes off about as well as you'd expect. Essentially, Zhonghui frames Deng Ai and has him arrested and shipped off. Obviously, that's a really great way to treat your co-worker, but Zhonghui declares his rebellion, and his own army or soldiers essentially go, no thanks. And he essentially gets swarmed and killed. Jiang Wei also dies within the chaos, and then Deng Ai, well, he actually just never reaches his destination because he also gets killed in the cart on the road that he got shipped off in by Zhonghui. So there's the Battle of Chengdu, the triumphant final stage of Dynasty Warriors 8 and 9, and then it immediately just goes to shit and everyone dies afterwards, which is insane. It's basically like the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones. Moving forward though, let's actually fast forward a little bit. 8 whole years, and this one's for the fans of Wu. So by 272, it's just Jin versus Wu. There's only 2 kingdoms left, and Wu is being run by a man named Sun Hao, who we'll probably get to later. However, the short version is he's basically just like the worst boss, and everyone just keeps defecting away from him. And one of those defectors is a governor of a fortress in Xiling, which is basically like, imagine Wu's front door to the Yangtze. He essentially flips to Jin. Jin sends an army to back him up, and then suddenly Wu is about to just get fucking ripped in half. However, enter Liu Kang, which basically sounds like a Mortal Kombat character. However, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he is Lu Xun's son, our smart tactician and favorite pyromaniac from the Wu Kingdom. Essentially, Liu Kang is about to pull off a masterclass in strategy. He essentially walls off the fortress, he holds off the Jin relief army, and he retakes the city and executes the traitorous governor. And I would say that this is probably like Wu's last great victory, of course delivered by a sequel character that Koei has never made. And it fucking really bothers me, because hearing stuff like this, I'm just like, man, this guy would be fucking awesome to have as a unique character. I mean, there's characters throughout this story or throughout the Dynasty Warriors games that maybe get one stage, or like, obviously have their stories extended or whatever, but it's just like, there's people who do a lot less and get included in the series. It'd be awesome if we got Liu Kang as a character, and he would actually work as a really great foil to the Jin army when going on all these countless fucking skirmishes that the Jin faction goes on when versing the Wu Kingdom. It's like, oh wow, you know, we're versing Deng Ai and Lian Shi for the 50th time again. It'd be great if we add a third person in there just to mix things up a little bit. But anyway, I'm currently working on like a members only video at the moment where it's going through or exploring like why the Jin faction is a little bit more forgettable, or why it could, like how we could make it a little bit more memorable or interesting. And that's basically the crux of it. Spoiler is that I think we really need to focus on adding, or Koei needs to focus on adding unique characters so that way the period stands out more. You've got characters like Liu Bei and the faction of Shu versus Cao Cao and the faction of Wei. And that rivalry and that dynamic really makes them stand out. But we just don't get that in the later period of the Three Kingdoms era. And I'd fucking love to see that shit, man. That'd be awesome. However, moving forward. Next up, we have Battle 3. And I just, quick disclaimer, this isn't really like a Three Kingdoms battle. Essentially what happens here, so it's like this 10-year period, right? Where it's Jin versus Wu, but Jin also has this rebellion problem. This is due to a Xianbei chieftain. I'm fucking terrified at trying to pronounce this name, so I'm just going to pop it up on the screen. And essentially this guy unites the frontier tribes and essentially spends a full decade trying to beat the Jin armies like a drum. This, more than anything, is the reason why Jin hadn't defeated Wu quicker or sooner. Jin couldn't finish Wu because he was so busy losing a second war at their back door, basically. And it kind of gave Wu a 10-year extension because of this rebellion that most of the Three Kingdoms fans have potentially never heard of. I don't believe it's depicted in any Dynasty Warriors game. I mean, shit, there's not too many games that cover this period of time as it is anyway, but I just thought I would mention it. However, there is one guy, this general who turns the tide, who smashes the Xianbei so hard that 200,000 tribespeople surrendered to Jin. And who was this guy? It was Wen Yang, which is like such an awesome feat, right? And this happened when he was 50. Apparently. The pretty boy from Dynasty Warriors 8 and 9, the guy who has a fucking javelin, I think he has a whip in Dynasty Warriors 9. I haven't played enough of that game. But anyway, so he fucking showed them what's what, showed them who's boss, and ended up sorting that situation out, which is really interesting and really cool. Again, would love to see that in a Dynasty Warriors game. So that is that conflict there. So technically not like a Three Kingdoms conflict, but I wanted to include that anyway because, of course, we have some action from a unique character, which I think is cool. Now, moving along to the final battle, the final showdown, and that is the conquest of Wu. And that goes from 279 to 280. And yeah, look, this is basically like, this is a massive set piece. This is like a set piece begging for Koei to make a battle here. But again, I'm just not sure how they could do that with, you know, so few unique officers alive at this point in time. But essentially, this is enormous, right? So Jin launches over 200,000 troops at Wu along 6 separate invasion routes, coordinated across the entire length of the Yangtze River. Just the grand finale of 100 years of war, which is fucking cool. And just like as far as the battle goes, like supposedly Wu had like stretched out giant iron chains across the Yangtze to block Jin's navy. Plus there's like underwater spikes, basically like this medieval anti-ship defense. It's just so fucking cool. It's just the ingenious war efforts. I just think it's just so interesting. So essentially the Jin admiral builds enormous rafts to sweep the spikes, and then just giant torches. We're talking giant oil-soaked building-sized torches mounted on ships that just literally melt the chains out of the river before sailing the armada down straight towards the Wu capital. Like, I mean, this is like a Dynasty Warriors stage that's just writing itself, basically. This could have been the Battle of Chibi 2.0, basically. However, just, I guess, speedrunning to the end here. So Wu's chancellor makes one last stand and dies on the field of battle. And basically, the entire loyal remnant of the government around him also falls. The capital falls, and the Wu emperor, Sun Hao, ties himself up, carries a coffin to the Jin camp, and, you know, this is basically like an extreme way of saying, hey guys, I surrender. Basically, he also gave up. So, you know, 263, we've got Liu Shan surrendering Shu to the Jin faction, and now in 280, we have Sun Hao surrendering the Wu faction or Wu kingdom to the forces of Jin. Now, the real question here is there anyone we actually know, unique officers or whatever from the Dynasty Warriors game that were present at this battle? Yes, one. And that is Jia Chong, winner of the Kanbei Kuroda lookalike contest. He essentially opposed the invasion from the start, actually. So he said that Wu was too strong. Then, while the army was actively winning, he was actually the first person to essentially say, hey, we should probably turn around, this seems like a bad idea or whatever. So he was actively participating in the conflict but wasn't a fan of the conflict, I suppose. And Wen Yang, by the way, so he was still alive, but I think because he was kind of handling the whole like rebellion kind of shit off to the side and had just wrapped that up by this point in time, I think that is the main reason why he wasn't really an active participant. So out of the whole game, there were 2 people that were still alive, so Wen Yang and Jia Chong. However, Jia Chong was the only person who was here in that battle. So I thought that was interesting. However, let's actually just let's bring this full circle, man. Again, the question of the video is, how does Dynasty Warriors end, or how does the Three Kingdoms period end? And in short, on May 1st, 280 AD, Sun Hao surrendered to the Jin dynasty of Emperor Sima Yan, who was Sima Jia's son, who at that point, due to this surrender, he reunited or reunified China for the first time in a century. That's it. That's the ending. I think it's actually a really great ending. Like it's interesting, and I think that there is a lot that Koei could potentially do. I think it would take a lot of work to be able to establish this period, but we've had like 2.5 decades of Wei, Wu, and Shu, of all these iconic characters from the Three Kingdoms period, and I understand that. Like, it's a really interesting period of time. But this era is also just as interesting if you do a little bit more research or look into it. And I'm actually glad that I looked into it for the purposes of this video, because man, this era in the games fucking sucks. It's so boring. And like when we think of the other factions, right? No one else from the games is remotely close to being alive historically. Like, look at the faction of Wu. The last person who was alive historically was Ding Fang. Ding Fang? God, I'm horrible at pronouncing these names. So he died in 271, like 9 years before the actual finale happened. Either way, I thought that was interesting. I'm really hoping that Koei does give us more from this era, whether it's like a Dynasty Warriors 10 and something of the like, where they just continue to expand further and flesh out this period of the Three Kingdoms era. However, I just wanted to explore how this series ends, or how this era ends. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know down below. If I got anything wrong, especially let me know down below. I'm not a history purist or anything like that. This was just a little bit of research I did for the purposes of this video, but I definitely enjoyed getting to the bottom of this period of just trying to learn how the Dynasty Warriors period ends. Now, like I said at the start, I'm going to be uploading a metric fuck ton of content for the month of August. I'm going to call it Awesome August, baby. And trust me, it's definitely going to be like a one-off, because there's a lot of stuff on the way. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more content. If you're interested, become a member. There's a lot of goodies over there, lots of content that we have uploaded over the years that is just, it's just chilling there, man. Or, if you want to join our members only Discord, or, get benefits like getting early access to videos and so on and so forth, check out the link in the description. But yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.